So the passage or quote that I chose to analyze for this week's assignment goes as follows. Quote, "It wasn't that I forgot Hannah, but at a certain point the memory of her stopped accompanying me wherever I went. She stayed behind, the way a city stays behind as a train pulls out of a station. It's there, somewhere behind you, and you could go back and make sure of it, but why should you?" So when I read this and just the lectures that we watched this week, what immediately came to mind was um, the personal guilt, like the type of guilt, like that moral guilt that they are both feeling. And but you could see like the dichotomy between how Michael feels and how Hannah probably felt. I mean, we don't have her experience because that's not how the book was written, obviously. But for Michael, we can see that he is one who is taking on kind of a responsibility that wasn't really his to take. You can see that even after he stops seeing Hannah, there's still this guilt that he takes on, and I think that's very telling of like the post-war generation that feels responsible for the events that occurred during the war, from what caused the war to the previous generations' lack of participation, as Michael felt in the war, which is why he saw all of them as guilty or as criminals. Whereas Hannah, even though we don't have her perspective, we can see, just given like the allusion to her being modeled off a female guard, Mandel, I believe was her last name, that even though she was first-hand guilty of having perpetuated crimes by her line of work and then what she chose to do during the war, you can see that she doesn't really feel that same guilt. It doesn't even carry that same guilt that Michael did while they were seeing each other, and I think it's a safe assumption to assume that she doesn't carry it afterwards either. Um, and so I think the inherited responsibility that Michael felt can isn't completely his fault, but it is partly because of the fact that he did choose, I think, willingly, even though he might have been coerced and there was that whole power imbalance and power dynamic between him and Hannah. He did, to some extent, go into that relationship willingly. And so I think he feels complicit in the actions of Hannah because he knew that she was doing this, yet he still saw her and was intimate with her. But on the other hand, I don't think it's his response. I don't think he is, again, firsthand responsible for the things that she was doing. It was her own decision to pursue those actions during the war. So I think, in my opinion, just like the inherited responsibility Michael felt, again, it's not completely his fault, but I can see why some would attribute it to him as well. He, even though young, was of the age of reason to have used his own brain to decide to get out of that relationship once he found out what Hannah was doing. But I think, again, because he felt kind of estranged by everybody he met, or everybody he supposedly cared about, he was unable to do so.